Well, hello, and thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Allison Ford. I'm the Vice President based in the Headhunters Vancouver office. And I can see we've got a great turnout today from across the country. We're excited to connect you to our webinar series, and this is all about setting you up for success in your job search and in your professional careers. So a couple housekeeping items before we begin. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, just type them into the chat panel and we'll address as many as possible at the end. We will send an email out tomorrow to all attendees with the link to the recording of this webinar. So that's going to include the audio and the video recording of these slides you'll see. So relax without madly taking notes, just enjoy. We'll be wrapped up in under an hour and get back to you and your busy days. So now it's my true pleasure to introduce Lisa Martin. Lisa is a longtime partner of ours who graciously shared her expertise and insights on our leadership panel event in the past. She's back by popular demand as our guest presenter on today's webinar. So her topic today is 5 ways to build presence, how to unleash leadership confidence, influence, and performance. If you're a leader in any organization of any industry or size, or at any stage of your leadership journey, you need to show up every day confident and decisive. And perhaps you're just kicking off your leadership journey and wanting to take that next step. You want to show you can build strong relationships, communicate effectively, and be graceful under pressure. So to learn how to command the room and leave that lasting impression, you need more than just leadership. You need leadership presence. Lisa is a professional certified coach, and she helps people discover how to be that high-impact, thriving leader. In addition to having offered 5 leadership books, she writes a leadership blog, coaches leaders one-on-one, offers online leadership courses, keynotes on leadership, and licenses her Lead and Live Better leadership development programs to organizations. Lisa has managed teams and been a partner in a national firm. She even owned her own company starting at age 28, and she works with an impressive client list like Aritzia, HSBC, TK, and PwC. Lisa, we are lucky to have you with us again today. So let's get started. Over to you, Lisa.
All right, thank you, Allison. And I'm excited to be here today to talk with you all about presence, and specifically your leadership presence. Today, I'm going to show you a proven methodology to increase your influence and impact with anyone, anywhere, anytime. But before I jump into today's content, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about myself. And Allison is giving you a great introduction. But what I want you to know about is my passion for leadership and my passion for supporting people to maximize their potential. And people have described me as a straight shooting teacher and a no-nonsense coach. So I just like to get results, and that's what I'm hoping for you today. So this webinar is designed to benefit you as a leader. It's for people who want to develop as leaders, those who are responsible for developing teams, those who are hiring leaders, and those who are wishing to be hired as leaders. So as we get started today, I want you to ask yourself this question: how engaged do you plan to be on a scale of 1 to 5? My request is that you turn off your devices and email and get focused. This is under an hour and it is going to go by fast. And here's the thing: presence requires that you be present. Someone said in a workshop the other day to a colleague, you have so much presence when you are present. So today we're going to answer 4 key questions. What's presence? Do you possess strong presence? What are the 5 elements of presence? And how can you learn more about presence? Now, here's the thing. People who possess leadership presence exude credibility and confidence. They've got what I call the sizzle and the steak. They can hold their own with influential people. In fact, they are influential themselves. And what research tells us is that leadership presence counts for 26% of what it takes to get promoted. Now, have you ever wondered what enables some people to shine and stand out while others seem to fade away in the background? Well, let's take a look at this example. Let's look at royalty for a minute, if you'll indulge me. And let's look at Prince William and Kate. A Google search today of their names comes up with 21 million hits. They are loved by the British and have a solid global following. They can hold their own with anyone, anywhere, from presidents to little children. They are royals. They possess what I believe is great presence. Now, take Prince Charles and Camilla. A similar Google search today resulted in 700,000 hits. All right, they're known globally, but not treasured. Many polls have indicated that there is little public support for Prince Charles to take the throne. They are also royals. They possess what I believe is marginal presence. What is the key differentiator between Prince William and Kate and Prince Charles and Camilla when it comes to their presence, you may wonder? I believe that Prince William and Kate have mastered the 5 elements of presence. They make everyone they meet feel that they matter. They leave a lasting positive impression. They know how to communicate through various channels, from strategically planned photos of their children to Prince William's compassionate speeches about his mother. They understand how to positively present themselves no matter what the situation. And you can do this too. I often hear from clients that they don't feel like they have a strong presence. They don't feel noticed or heard and remembered. What I want to talk to you about today is how to exude what I call the X factor and master the skill of presence. But before we do that, I'd like to take a quick poll with you and find out how you're feeling about your leadership presence. Do you believe you exude leadership presence rarely, sometimes, or frequently? And let's see how the results come in. I'll share with you momentarily the final results. All right, so we've got 56% saying sometimes, 9% saying rarely, and 36% saying frequently. So that's good news. We've got a lot of people here who are feeling that, or a third of us feeling that we're doing well at this frequently, and then 56 just over half sometimes, and a few feel like your presence isn't quite where you want it to be. Now, the important thing about this poll is for you. It's for your own self-awareness to judge, where do I sit on this continuum of leadership presence? And then being able to take that information and decide how you want to grow and develop with that. So let me tell you a bit of a story. I was conducting a workshop recently for my Lead Advanced program, and we were getting into the subject of presence. And I asked people to tell me, who did they think has presence? Like, give me an example of people who have presence. And they cited people like Bill Clinton, Macklemore, David Suzuki, the CEO of the Vancouver Canucks. And I said, well, what makes them have presence in your mind? And they said, well, all these people make you feel great or at ease in any situation. And they're often the smartest person in the room. And I said to them, that makes me feel like you're describing a magician who is able to cast a spell. And here's the thing, for years, I was in public relations, and Allison said my first company I started in when I was 28 was a public relations consulting firm, and I spent many years in that field. And I did a lot of media coaching and presentation coaching, and I taught big executives in big companies like Home Depot and Bell and Nintendo how to be in front of the room and how to show up with great presence. And then it turned around that I had to be in front of the room, either in sales conversations or tough conversations with my team. And I had to apply everything that I was teaching others to myself. And I'll tell you what, I had successes and failures. And the failures came down to lack of preparation, not being confident in my material or message, or not being physically ready, or not setting my intention. So I practiced and analyzed, and I watched TED Talks, and I had lots more conversations and a lot more presentations, and I documented what worked and didn't work. And I learned how to conquer fear and be confident. And I learned what the secret was to have great presence, whether you were on a stage or off the stage, in terms of being in an interview or having conversations one-on-one with others. And I'm going to share with you what I learned. And what I learned is that this is this somewhat intangible, yet you can deconstruct it thing called the factor X that people with great presence possess. And what does that mean? Well, it means that people with the X factor are able to leave a lasting impression. They have trusting relationships with others. People feel that when they see this person, the way they show up is who they really are, and what they say they are going to do, they do. So they inspire trust. They are very decisive. They come across as credible in their subject matter, and also confident in their body language, and also in the way in which they articulate what's important to them and their vision. They're able, because they build this trust, they're able to build strong relationships. And that also comes from being able to ensure that people feel that they are important when they are around them. They're excellent at communicating. They make sure that they are able to say the right thing in the right way at the right time to get their message across. And they don't crack. They're able to handle a lot of pressure and be resilient and what I would call elegant and graceful under pressure. Now, I really believe that presence means you've got it all together, that you can hold your own with the top guns, that you fit in comfortably with influential people, and leaders around you know that you can assume great responsibility and manage well when a crisis hits. Now, here's the thing. I believe that people who possess great presence have a definite impact on others, and people around them believe in their own potential for greatness when they are around people who possess solid leadership presence. And let's talk about Muhammad Ali for a minute. Muhammad Ali, he was the self-proclaimed greatest. And let's face it, he had amazing presence. And I watched this documentary recently about him, which was absolutely fascinating for anybody who's interested in Ali. Just Google Ali documentary and you'll find it. And one thing, all the people that were interviewed in this documentary, the one thing that they all had in common, they all said this about Ali. They said, Ali made you feel great about yourself. And to me, that's the signature stamp of someone with great presence. And in fact, this weekend I was out for brunch with some folks, and they were talking about this new CEO of this organization that they're working with. And they were talking about what an amazing person he was and how he had this terrific presence. And I started asking them questions about, well, what made that presence so great? And the thing that they said was, he made you feel fantastic when you were with him. He remembered your name. He remembered things about you. And he just was awesome to be around. So again, the idea here is people with great leadership presence make other people feel great. We have a little glitch there with the PowerPoint. All right, so now here's the other thing I want to make really clear. That presence is not a superficial attribute. It's not about flashiness or a big personality. In fact, anyone can develop it and remain authentic and true to their nature. You don't need to be extroverted or charismatic or a barrel of laughs to be very strong in your leadership presence. And so, for example, you can just compare the Dalai Lama and Oprah, two very different styles. Dalai Lama, very quiet, but extremely memorable. And if you've ever had the pleasure of being in his company, you will never forget him. And Oprah is on the other side of the spectrum, but each one of them has terrific presence, but does it in their own authentic way. The minute you try to be someone that you are not, I think that people can sniff out authenticity from a mile away. So to be true to yourself and your own style is key to having strong leadership presence. So why is this important? Well, people with strong leadership presence are the ones that really climb up the corporate ladder, if you want to call it that, the most quickly. They're the ones who make the sale. They're the ones who get hired. They're the ones who get the best assignments. And they're the ones who inspire others to action. And a key element of being a great leader is your ability to inspire others to action. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 elements of presence. I'm going to share with you the presence model from my Lead Advanced program and book, and I'm going to describe each element. And as I do, I'll share a self-assessment statement to help you assess how proficient you are in each element. So I will describe the element, I will give you the statement, and you are to answer yes, no, or sometimes. And just keep some notes of this. Again, this is a self-assessment. It's for your benefit. So let's get started. So substance is clearly knowing your stuff. It's being a subject matter expert and knowing your core work responsibilities. Your assessment statement is, I rarely, if ever, feel out of depth discussing my core area of expertise. I rarely, if ever, feel out of my depth discussing my core area of expertise. Yes, no, or sometimes. The next element, relational authenticity. That's really creating genuine connections with the real you, and that you have the ability to make people feel that they matter. Your self-assessment statement is, I have the trust of others. I have the trust of others. Yes, no, or sometimes. Next element is style. Style is more than your clothes, but it is about how you show up every day as a leader. And I like to talk about the ACE of style, with ACE being an acronym for appearance, confidence, and energy. So appearance is how you pull yourself together. Confidence is how you show up confidently, and energy is how you manage your energy to each situation. So if it is a celebratory situation, you are upbeat and celebratory. If it is a somber occasion, then you too match your energy level to the situation that you are in. Now let's talk about, oops, I got to ask you your question. So here it is. I constantly exude confidence via my posture and body language. So your self-assessment statement is, I constantly exude confidence via my posture and body language. Yes, no, or sometimes. I get so excited about this model. I want to keep showing you all the elements that I move forward too quickly before I give you your assessment statement. So let's move on to the next element, which is communication. And that's clearly getting your point across at the right time, in the right way, to the right people. Self-assessment statement is, I communicate thoughts, feelings, and insights with clarity, directness, and simplicity. I communicate thoughts, feelings, and insights with clarity, directness, and simplicity. Yes, no, or sometimes. Now for the last element in the model, situational agility. Situational agility really focuses on your ability to dance with the client, the audience, and the situation. And what I've noticed is oftentimes the more advanced you are in your career, the better or more proficient you are with situational agility. And that can make sense because you've come across many situations, so you know how to respond. But I do see this. I do see that some people who are early in their career just have a natural affinity towards situational agility. So here's your assessment statement. I quickly read a room and handle myself accordingly. I quickly read a room and handle myself accordingly. Yes, no, or sometimes. So now I'd like to check in with you with a quick poll, and I'd like to get a sense of those 5 elements, which element is your weakest? So let's take the opportunity to fill in the poll. We'll wait for the results to come in. I can see some activity here, some moving back and forth. There's no right or wrong answer on this. It's just take a look at your assessment statements and where your yeses and nos showed up, and you'll be able to figure out quickly what is your weakest element. All right, so interesting. We have got this pretty much coming evenly across the board for style, communication, and situational agility. What's showing up as the highest need around weakness is communication at 33%. And what we're seeing for the lower end is substance at 14% and relational authenticity at 6%. So again, what's relevant about this poll is for you to be aware of where your areas for development are. And the reason that I say that, if you're one of the people that hit communication, then this is the area to start at first in terms of improving or wanting to enhance your leadership presence. It's like that idea of low-hanging fruit, if you'll excuse the cliche. If you can pick 1 or 2 things that are easy and simple for you to do, that will give you your best return on effort to move you forward in building your leadership presence. So what I'd like to do next is share with you 4 strategies to build your presence. But before I do that, I do want to mention something to watch out for when you're either interviewing for work and or hiring someone. And you wanting to be able to pay attention to how you're coming across with your leadership presence, or conversely, paying attention to how someone is coming across with their leadership presence. And what I want you to think about, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is the people with leadership presence have both the sizzle and the steak. So the substance is the core of the presence model for a reason. You don't want to get seduced by the sizzle. Always make sure there is steak. So when you're going in for an interview, you can be fabulous at those 4 elements of leadership presence, but you've also got to have the substance. Those people that are looking to hire you are looking to make sure that you have the substance, that you can do the job. And then your ability to have leadership presence is in addition to that. And so for those that are looking for hiring, same thing. Don't get overshadowed by the sizzle. Make sure that there's the steak. So the best opportunity, the way that I like to look at it, is that you get a steak that is sizzling, or that you are a steak that is sizzling. So let's get into some of those concepts or strategies around building your leadership presence. And the first one I want to talk about is relational intelligence. And there's a question you need to ask yourself if you're wanting to build your relational intelligence. And the first question is this: do I really like people? Not everybody likes people. And the reason we need to ask ourselves this question is, to build your relational intelligence, you have to have the desire to make meaningful connections. And this is for both parties. It's not only building meaningful connections for your benefit, it's on both sides of the equation. It's meant to be the benefit of both parties. And relational intelligence is like any muscle. If you don't use it, it will atrophy. So when you're building relational intelligence, some of the things you want to focus on are really being able to become more self-aware and visible and accessible to people. So open your door at work and at home. Be vulnerable, but don't overshare. And be transparent. Give people an opportunity to know what is really going on, and showcase that relationships are important to you. And it's interesting. There was an organization, and this is reported in in an HBR article, that really focused on being able to be more transparent and seeing what the results were. So this organization is called Bridgewater Associates, and it's perhaps one of the largest and most successful hedge funds in the world, with about $150 billion in assets. And they pursue what they call radical transparency. And they record every meeting and provide the audio files to everyone in the company. And they watch their results improve as a result of everyone having a better understanding of what was going on. There's also an organization called the Decurion Corporation, and it's a LA-based real estate development firm with about just over 1,000 employees, and they hold fishbowl conversations. So what that means is, in small groups, people sit in a circle around a smaller circle, and then they are able to discuss issues at hand and move through stalled developments and build up customer loyalty programs. And they saw that their results also improved. So doing any of these kinds of activities, what it will do, it'll help you really lower assumptions and judgments or generalizations about people. It'll also help you be less cynical and to reduce your lack of trust of others. So when you build your relational intelligence, it's all really about caring about other people, getting to know them, and sharing information in a way that is beneficial for everybody. Now, let's talk about our next strategy for building leadership presence. And I had this client who was absolutely brilliant, but he threw everyone off because he couldn't make eye contact. In a conversation, he just couldn't look people in the eye. And this was really causing him challenges in terms of his ability to advance within the organization. And I have this great exercise in our Lead Advance program, and I'm going to share this with you because you can do this exercise in your workplace or just with a small group of friends. And what we do in this exercise is we do a role-playing scenario where we have a conversation and people make eye contact during the conversation. And then we role-play a conversation where people have no eye contact, and how uncomfortable it makes people feel. So there's a real need in building leadership presence, if you're going to make people feel they matter, is that you make eye contact. And in addition, why else does this matter? Well, I saw Barbara Corcoran from the Shark Tank once, and she said that, you know, at the beginning of the show, the contestants have to stand in front of the sharks for a full 5 minutes without saying a word, as, you know, they prep lighting, etc. And she said, when I watch someone who's under tremendous pressure, that is a great test. Even before they open their mouth, I know whom I'm in and who I'm out on. I just sort of come up with a reason why that I can say on camera. But the truth is, I know when I'm out because right away, because when a guy takes his hands out of his pockets and he's shifting and he's no longer making eye contact, he's sweating bullets and his knees are jiggling. I mean, is this a guy I'm going to give my money to? So really important about eye contact. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is body language. And improving your leadership presence, a lot of it will come down to your body language. Research says that body language accounts for 60 to 93% of communication. And that's huge. Now, it doesn't mean that your words don't matter, they do, but often what people remember the most is how you made them feel. So it's important that you come forward with body language that really enables you to put forward your best self. Now, there's a great TED Talk by Amy Cuddy that talks specifically about how body language shapes who you are and how it will lower your stress hormone and raise your testosterone. And it really does make a difference in terms of how you show up comfortable and confident. And it's the whole idea before you're about to show up to an important engagement, whatever it may be, whether it's a conversation with 1 or 1,000 people, that you can do what is called a power pose, which is the ability to move your adrenaline positively through your body to take that fight or flight that might happen when you're nervous to enable you to be grounded and show up calm and confident. And it's a great thing to do before you go and perhaps do a presentation. It's also a great thing to do before you go and have an interview to get you really grounded in your body and confident in your body language. But the other thing I want you to be aware of too, it's not just body language that we have to pay attention to, it's the actual words that we use. So one quick tip I want to give with you is the power of removing one word from your language, the power of removing one word from your language, and that is the word just. And just takes, it just takes some of the confidence and clarity out of your communication style. So for example, instead of saying, I just wanted to update you, you can say, here's an update. Instead of saying, I just thought a discussion about our strategy would be a good idea, instead say, now's a good time to discuss our strategy. So let's get into our fourth strategy of building leadership presence. And this is around situational agility. So if you want to excel in situational agility, it's all about being quick on your feet and getting your brain to see and look for new patterns and adjust. And you have to unlock old behaviors and be open to new behaviors. And there's a great video you can watch on YouTube by Destin Sandlin. And he talks about this experiment that he did trying to learn how to ride a bike that was put together backwards. So when he pedaled, it went in the opposite direction and the handlebars went in the opposite direction of a normal bike. Now, it's a pretty funny video because not only is he trying to do it, he goes and does talks and asks people to come up from the audience on stage and do this. And you think it's going to be easy. It's very, very difficult. And what that goes to tell us is that we have patterns ingrained in our brain, and we need to be able to take the time to unlearn certain behaviors and also to be able to respond better to situations. Because the interesting thing about this was he did this experiment with his 6-year-old son. It took Destin around 6 months to really learn how to ride the backwards bicycle properly. It took his 6-year-old son 2 weeks to learn how to do it. So when we talk about situational agility, it's all about how do we become more responsive and learn and train our brain to think in different ways and become much more adaptable. All right, I want to check in with everybody again. Let's do our last poll for today. And now that we've worked through this, I'd love to hear from you. What presence building strategy do you need to work on the most? All right. I see the answers coming in. And again, the beauty of these polls is this is for your self. This is for you to build your own self-awareness around where is it best to put your energy. And let's have a look at our results. And they are, so what I'm seeing here is only 8% of people put down eye contact. So congratulations, everybody's doing a really good job of making eye contact. But I would ask you to check that with someone and get some feedback from someone else and say, because you might think you're great at eye contact, but maybe you're not. So it's really important to get some feedback from others. Lots in here on building relational intelligence, finding your power pose, and our highest one is train your brain at 41%. So thanks everybody for participating in the poll. Now take this information and really use it to your benefit. And so that brings me to my next point, which is all the things that we've talked about in the last few minutes. What is the one thing that you're going to move forward on? What's the one thing that's really going to help you build your leadership presence? And just take a minute to note that down so it's something that you can come back and refer to. I also said that I would help you, give you some information on how you could learn more about presence. And I have two things for you that will be able to support you build your leadership presence. And the first one that I want to tell you about is something called 5 Steps to Your Best Presentation Ever. And this is a 5-part online self-study course that gives you concrete steps to elevate your presentation so you're more influential and impactful. Because as leaders, one of the most valuable things that we can do for ourselves is help ourselves become great at presentations. Because as a leader, you're going to be giving presentations, whether small ones in elevators or big ones on stages, or whether you're going into a hiring interview and you need to put your best foot forward. So with 5 steps to your best presentation ever, you'll receive video training with me, plus 5 learning modules with advice articles, self-coaching questions, and pro tips, and links to additional resources and templates that will help you clarify your outcomes, overcome stage fright, and consistently deliver stellar performance. So this is valued at $299, but as someone who has taken the time to be on this webinar today and part of the Headhunters family, we've got a special discounted pricing for you at $39. So take advantage of the pilot pricing for the cost of a book, and you'll be able to master your presentations 1 person to 1,000. Now that discounted pricing is available until midnight Friday this week, Now, I promised you 2 things. The next thing that I want to share with you is I mentioned that I have a book called Lead Advanced, and in Lead Advanced, we talk about 6 skills to be the ultimate executive, and one of those is presence. And I'd like to offer for you, if you think this would be of value to you, to get a copy of the chapter on presence from my book. And if you want a free chapter, just hit this link and it'll take you to a page where you can download a copy of this chapter for you. I wish all of you much success on this journey to building your leadership presence. And if we have any questions, Allison, we're ready to take them.
Thanks, Lisa. Once again, there are just so many takeaways. And I really appreciate your great examples of how we can bring leadership presence into our day-to-day, whether that's on the job or in our personal lives or even as part of a job search. So thanks for all that. We do have some questions, and as I'm going through some of these questions, feel free again to add your questions in to the chat panel. First one here. I'm trying to take a first step into leadership and have an upcoming interview. How can I help showcase my leadership potential because I don't have the experience?
Okay. Because I don't have all the information on that, I think part of the answer is, even if you haven't had a lot of direct experience or you're feeling that, what experience do you have that showcases your leadership I would call it your leadership quotient or intelligence or experience. You could have been a volunteer in something that had a leadership role. You could have had a project specifically where you played a leadership role. So I'd really encourage you to keep a checklist basically of the kinds of things that you have done that show your leadership capacity. And that really forms part of that substance part of the model. And then being able to communicate that effectively, be relational with someone, show up feeling sharp and looking sharp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. And a couple of the other tips that you gave would be really applicable here too, because really an interview is like a presentation, isn't it?
It is.
And you've got a limited amount of time to make that great impression. So maintaining that eye contact, taking the word just out of the vocabulary, and really helping people feel special and therefore be memorable, I think would be great for an interview as well. So good question.
Yeah,
Again, feel free
to
type your questions into the chat, and if you would like to send it privately to the panelists, please do that. You're welcome to do that as well. Sorry, Lisa, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
I think too, though, what you're saying is so important about, and I hadn't really thought about it until just a few minutes ago, as you're saying that, about how a job interview really is a presentation. It really is, isn't it? It's a form of a presentation. And
yeah.
I think that the part that is also really relevant there too is being real, and I hate to overuse the word authenticity, but I think being real and true to yourself and your nature is really, really, really important, because you want to get that job based on who you really are, because you want to be there for a while, and you don't want to be putting yourself in a situation where you're not being you.
Right, for sure. Okay, next question. I want to be a better leader for my team, but I'm not comfortable being the loudest in the room. How can I get people's buy-in in a different way?
That's a great one. So that would tell me, I'm going to take a leap here, that would tell me that this person asking the question leans more towards introversion than extroversion. And so a great book to read is Quiet by Susan Cain. And some of the most effective leaders are quiet leaders. And what it means is maybe you need to go and canvas people, in advance of a meeting. You need to use different techniques that you're comfortable with. But quiet leaders still need to be able to have a strong leadership presence and be able to articulate their point of view and inspire others to action, but doing it in more of a quiet, not so extroverted way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's more your example of the Dalai Lama, which I thought was great. That strength and confidence, again, the memorable way and the trust that we have with the Dalai Lama. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, great. Another question here. Lisa, can you please tell us what you mean about feed forward?
Oh, feed forward. Yes. Okay, so feed forward, it's a technique on how to help people improve. So if you're dealing with a team, so feedback works like this. You sit in the present and you're looking back at something that's happened in the past, and you're giving suggestions to people on their past behavior. Feed forward says we're in the present and we're looking forward, and you're giving people suggestions on their behavior in the future, in the time to come. So people who have great leadership presence really understand the difference between feedback and feed forward, and use them together as a team approach to help others to grow and advance in their careers.
Great. Do you do much work with peer leadership as well, Lisa? Because we're talking about sort of leadership presence in presenting, whether it be in an interview or presenting to a group at work. What about leadership peer-to-peer? Can you give us a few examples about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say that the elements of presence is the same no matter whom you're dealing with, whether it's peer-to-peer or, from a 360 point of view, whether it's above, beside, below you, right? And peer-to-peer, I think what's really important there is that ability to have built those trusting relationships with your peers, and that you're someone that they know that they can count on. Because if you haven't got that, then you might have some challenge with your leadership presence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Another question, and thank you for this one. Any tips, please, for active listening instead of judging?
I love that question. I love the person who asked that question.
Good one, yeah.
It's such a great question. Well, the first one is get out of your head and practice what I call mindful listening, which is really being present to the individual that you're having the conversation with, and to actually have the patience and curiosity and care to listen to what they're saying. Because what often happens with high achievers, and that's the people that I do a lot of work with, is that high achievers are always thinking ahead, right? And so when they're having a conversation with somebody, they're only half listening because they're thinking ahead about how they're going to respond or what's on their agenda. And half the time you miss what people have really said because you're too busy listening to yourself, not really listening to the other person.
Yeah, and then the judging really is one I know we can all use in our professional and personal lives, perhaps, of really showing that we're listening without passing judgment in the moment. But that's a way to build trust with people as well, to have the transparency in a conversation and a safe space for people to have those honest discussions. And that's when I think of the strongest leaders and mentors that I know. It is often how they leave me feeling after an interaction, and it is that I've been heard and not judged, which I think is great. So yeah, great question. Thank you.
I can say one more thing about judgment too, which is I think that you have to be able to be very conscious about that, Allison, and going into any kind of interaction with anybody intentionally withholding judgment. And only you'll know if you lean more towards a judgment oriented personality or not. And if you do, you have to be really disciplined in practice to go in open-minded, with the idea that, particularly from a relational authenticity point of view, I'm going to learn something here that perhaps I didn't know before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if we use the example of an interview situation again, I know one of our blog posts this week was about, a sure way to make a poor impression in a job interview would be to speak poorly of a former employer, or to have some of those really harsh judgment statements be part of the first impression a new person has about you. So
I love that idea for a blog post. Everybody should read that one. I think that sounds
yeah, that's right. That's Kristen, our marketing manager, who's got some great ideas for the blog. Now, as we wind up today, first of all, Lisa, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and really putting yourself out there for these questions on the fly. So much of what you cover is beneficial to both experienced and emerging leaders. So all of us need a tune-up from time to time, and those takeaways we can action right away. So thank you for the downloads as well. We will be really happy to share that with our network. So before everyone signs off here, you should see a link in the chat that is there for you to provide some feedback on our webinar. It just takes 5 seconds and helps us to connect you with topics that help all of us, as Lisa said today, really continue to live and lead better. Now, an email will be sent out tomorrow with a link to the recording and a survey if you didn't have a chance to complete it here today. If you don't see that email within the next 24 hours, check your junk mail, email us if you really haven't received it, because we want to make sure that this recording gets into your hands. And any questions about today's webinar, please email us at the address on the screen. That's connect@theheadhunters.ca. So with our webinar series, we're excited to announce that our next webinar in April is going to be on an exciting topic hosted by our friends at Logan HR. And the topic will be how to optimize your LinkedIn profile to boost your personal brand. So again, one that we can all really learn from, I'm sure. So final thanks to you, Lisa. Watch for the registration for our April webinar, and enjoy your day, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.